Today we're doing the AFC North, which would be very fun, and we'll start bottom up like we did with the AFC East, with the Cleveland Browns, who finished 3-14 last year and shook up the NFL draft by trading away the opportunity to select Travis Hunter, a decision that I thought was pretty wise, especially given the haul that they got for him.
Yep.
But we'll see. I mean, this is a strange team to me, Albert, because the strength of this team basically since the Deshaun Watson stage of the rebuild, or when Baker Mayfield was starting to push them into the playoffs, was the offensive line and the defensive line.
Yep.
And I guess when Jim Schwartz got there, really the defensive side of the ball, the front seven, once they got
Yep.
JOK involved and everything like that. But now we're on the back end of this where Jack Conklin, Wyatt Teller, Joel Bitonio, all these guys are on the back nine in their career, or maybe on the 18th hole of their career at this point. Nick Chubb is no longer on the team, wasn't what he was before last year.
Mhm.
And so you're kind of meeting together with this strange sort of quick rebuild. You bring in Joe Flacco, you bring in a
Mhm.
running back, you bring in some patch and replace pieces. Is this team good enough for realistic expectation to be like an 8, 9, 10 win season and to sneak into the back end of the AFC playoffs?
Yes, but they need a lot of things to break right.
Correct.
I just think they're in a tough division, obviously. That's self-explanatory. I think we're gonna have pretty high expectations for the other three teams, right?
Right.
So like that's the first piece of it is it's tougher to make the playoffs when your schedule is more difficult, and just being in that division, by virtue of being in that division, their schedule is not easy. So like there's that piece of it. And you look at the first, I mean, shoot, I looked at this like this was something I looked at like almost right away and was like, holy crap. You know what I mean? Like you could be staring down the barrel of 0-6 here.
Oh,
And
I
that they
know.
have Cincinnati, Baltimore, Green Bay, Detroit, Minnesota, Pittsburgh. Um, that's not. I mean, that is and there's a trip to London in there. I mean, it's just that's really difficult. And now we've given Dolphins fans another reason to get after me because the seventh game is against the Dolphins, and I didn't group it in. So, um, but yeah, I mean, like it's really tough. So I think what like for me, like what this season really rides on, Andrew Barry's come under the microscope there. And there are some people who feel like Andrew Barry should be on the hot seat in that fan base, right? And looking at it, and I've got friends in that fan base, obviously, so I know. Um, I think if they are to get to 9 or 10 wins, it's going to be because Andrew Barry did a great job
Right.
drafting and putting players in the roster who the coaches have developed. Because I think it's going to ride on DeJuan Jones developing at left tackle, Cedric Tillman developing at receiver, hitting on the running
Mm-hmm.
backs that you drafted, hitting on Mason Graham, hitting on Carson Schlesinger.
I
Like
think
so,
that's the most important one, if I'm being honest, like right
yeah,
away, right?
yeah. I mean, like you look at the makeup of the roster, and there are so many areas where it's like they need to have gotten that right. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like that it's even if you want to take it out of just outside of just the draft, Jerry Judy, right? Like they took a risk on Jerry Judy, and giving him and paying him and saying to themselves, we believe this guy is going to wind up being a number one receiver. And so we'll give him, what was it, 17 million a year
Yeah.
based on the fact that we believe this is going to be a bargain,
Right.
a couple of years down the line. So, um, I think there's a formula here if some of those things pan out, which is play really good defense, have a kick-ass running game, and but a lot of that is really tied to what happens with, again, Quinshon Judkins, Dylan Sampson, DeJuan Jones, Mason Graham, Carson Schlesinger. Like that to me is like the formula here isn't to have a quarterback be a revelation. The formula here is to shorten games and lean on your defense and have the run game to do that. Like that's the formula.
tell me if this makes sense, because I think what Andrew Barry is very good at is doing the things that good general managers do. But there's
Mhm.
a difference between doing the things that good general managers do and doing the things that good general managers do, and then in the process of that, acquiring a bunch of kick-ass players that just destroy everybody else, right? Like you can make like the way that he handled the receiver market, I thought was
Mhm.
so smart. And if I'm another team, I want that kind of brain power in there to
Yeah.
coach me through the economics of it. That's just one example. Like he's done a lot of these things. But the overarching question here is, with all of these processes in place, have we come out with a whip ass team that's not going to bend down to the rest of the AFC North? And it's like arguably like the second or third hardest division in the NFL. Maybe, I mean, I don't know. I would say probably the second hardest division in the
Yep.
NFL right now. And so, is what I'm saying, does that make sense? Like, I think that there's, you can do everything right, but you can still not come away with the players that you need to survive in that environment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think like most of what Andrew Barry's done is logical. You can explain it. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like, but there's the also the part of it where it's like you have to hit on players too. And like so if you miss on a player at a premium spot, like that can leave a mark,
Right.
right? Like so Jedrick Wills over Tristan Wirfs in 2020 left a pretty big mark.
Right.
Like if you take Wirfs there, what does your offensive line look like right now?
Right.
It's really good, right? So like, and there are other decisions they've made over time that I think have left that sort of mark. I just, Greg Newsome at corner in the first round, like wasn't a dumpster fire, but like wasn't the answer opposite Denzel Ward.
Right.
They've had, they've had kind of a little bit of a revolving door opposite Miles Garrett. When you go through like the Zadarius Smiths of the world, So like I think a lot of the things they've done are logical and make sense. And they do have like a premium position, some really good players, but I mean you do have to hit on the player too. It's not just doing the logical thing. It's, at a baseline, it's like making sure the guy can play.
I think so. Here's my hot take here. I think if the Bengals don't get Trey Hendrickson done, and we'll get to that in a minute, and they're down a premium pass rusher in week one, and it's just Shamar Stewart, assuming they get that done. I think that the Browns have an easier time getting off the landing strip here, and getting into
Yeah.
the win column. But like we saw when they got their doors blown off by the Texans in the playoffs with Flacco, is that's the limitation to Flacco. If you're zero blitzing this team to all hell and just sending chaos into the backfield, Joe Flacco is a great quarterback, but he's not going to be able to evade pressure, right?
Yeah.
He's just not. And that's the downside. That's the fatal flaw. And you have all these teams now that are going to come down the pike right at the beginning of the season that have really good, really versatile pass rushes. And I'll pay Miami a compliment. I hope they see this on YouTube. Is that I put them right in there with Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
with Minnesota, with Detroit, with Baltimore, all these teams that can just absolutely make life miserable. But I do think that they could get off the ground if they
Well,
can, maybe if they avoid Trey Hendrickson in week one. I don't know.
that's why, like the run game is going to be so important,
Right.
and I do think it's notable that they took, I mean, I think Dylan Sampson can really play too. I have Judkins over I think it's over my left shoulder or my left shoulder here.
No bias here.
So Judkins is held in high regard in this office, but I think I think both those guys can play, and I think it's interesting that they doubled down on the position the way that they did. You
Sure.
know, I think it's kind of like I think it's a little bit of a window into what they're thinking and where they're going this year with this. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, can this be an 8 or 9 win team? Sure, it can be an 8 or 9 win team. Like, and I think um, I think you might be deluding yourself a little bit to think that they're going to come out of this year with an answer at quarterback with like this is the guy.
Right.
Um, because if Shador Sanders' name was Shador Smith, we wouldn't say like I wouldn't be sitting here and telling you like, yes, like that can be, yes, that's the long term answer. He's right there on the roster. We wouldn't be saying that if it wasn't his last name. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And so if this was just, run of the mill third round pick, fifth round pick at quarterback that you put on the roster and you add them to Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett, what you would say is they're kicking the can down the road at the position for another year, which
100%. I would not be surprised at all
especially
if
with
they
the trade,
drafted.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially with the trade that they made.
Yes.
Um, so
I completely and totally agree with that. So to put a bow on this, I think a good season, and I'll give you a chance to give your 30 seconds here too. I think if I'm a Browns fan, 8 wins is a realistically good season. But here's a couple things that I want to see. Is Carson Schwarzenegger making plays? Can you still run big nickel like you did with JOK and shut down those Shanahan style offenses? Can Mason Graham and Myles Garrett work together? Like we've seen in LA, where the defensive tackle and defensive end combinations can yield a lot of really good things, even if it's just two guys who learn how to work together. Is that a possibility? And like you said, is one of these backs a dude? Is one of these backs a guy? And I think if you come out of that, shoot, with 6, 7, even 7 or 8 wins, and that is working for you, you trade up and you get a quarterback, or you hang back and you get the prize of the veteran quarterback for veteran free agency next year. And I don't know exactly who that is off the top of my head right now, but then you go, and
yeah.
I think that the expectations are much higher.
And I think like part of the thing about next year's quarterback class is too, like that it does feel like there's going to be a number of guys there are a number of guys right now who have a chance to go in the first round, whether you're talking about, Garrett Nussmeier or Lenoris Sellers or Drew Aller or Cade Klubnik. I don't want to get in the Archman conversation again, but like, there's like, I think there's a number of guys where if they have really good years, like they have a chance to go in the first round. So you might be talking about potentially finding an answer at the position later in the first round.
Give yourself a couple more chances to hit at the lottery.